What's up guys, Part-Time Gamer Dad here, and today we're going to talk about the new game that came out this year called INDIKA. So back in May of this year, 2024, the game was released on Steam, PS5, and Xbox One. The game appeared to have a really interesting concept when you started watching the trailers. It was a game that was presented as you play as a nun who is encountering the voice of the devil trying to speak doubt and potentially evil into your mind throughout the entire game. Now, through some of the trailers, through some gameplay reveals, and through some content creators releasing gameplay themselves, we found out that the character of INDIKA, the character you play as, actually used prayer as a countermeasure to these encounters with the voice of the devil, and that created really interesting scenarios and levels where puzzles were completed or figured out by using prayer to put the world back together, or if you stopped praying and the devil's voice was in control of the narrative of the story, it would pull the world apart. So you would have to use prayer in strategic ways to kind of get out of these areas that the devil was in control of, which I thought, especially being a guy who is a Christian, I'm a believer, I'm a worship leader, like this and a gamer all at the same time, and I'm really open to ideas that are presented in really artistic ways. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was going to be an interesting concept that a game developer would take towards this conflict between good and evil. Now, the rest of how the game was going to be played out, because it was clear that those sections may not be the entire game, the rest of the gameplay was left kind of vague. But the game only takes about 4 to 5 hours. So right now, I'm going to play it, and then we're going to review it. So I'll see you guys after I get done playing INDIKA.
5 hours later.
I messed up. So when I say this game is an experience, I think this game isn't bad. I actually think it's a good game in the context that it's a game. And you play it, and it's a video game, and you play it, and it's good. It's good in terms of that it is a game. It is playable. It's very self-aware that it's a game, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Okay, so in INDIKA, you play as the nun that I just described to you a few hours ago. And INDIKA is a really interesting character because she's kind of almost at conflict with herself in terms of if she actually fully reconciles her beliefs, or if she has become disillusioned with her faith against the background of she's almost kind of filtering it through people, right? And the encounters that she has with people, which makes a lot of sense, because if you think of the context of a lot of people who become disillusioned by Christianity, a lot of times they say, well, I went to this church and the experience was really bad, or these people who are in roles of authority, they left a really negative impact on me. And through the game, it's almost like the devil really takes that little seed of issue or conflict and just expands upon it. It almost causes INDIKA to question her own faith. Now, throughout the game, you have a companion, and that companion, whose name is escaping me right now, he's a one-handed companion. Spoilers, that's a big part of the story. And also, I guess, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know about the narrative of this game, the plot of this game, I think you should just click away now, because I don't think I'll be able to talk about the game without going really deep into the plot. I'm going to talk about sound design, gameplay mechanics, but we're going to talk about the plot a lot, because that is the thing that intrigued me about this game to start with. It is the thing that really, again, as a Christian, I've got to talk about it to some degree, because I think the way they approached it was interesting, but I think it was half-baked. I think that there was kind of some cop-outs, and unfortunately, to me, I think the game suffered as a result of it, but we're going to have to talk about narrative. We're going to have to talk about plot. So if you don't want to know about it, go to Steam. It's like $20. Like I said, it's about 5 hours, maybe a little more, because there were some parts of it that were a little frustrating. So click away, go play the game, come back, and pick up right after this. Okay, so for all of you who are still here, I think that for me, the biggest issue of this game, well, there's a few. Number one, controls are incredibly frustrating, especially in sections where they're required to be more precise. There's a level where you're kind of climbing this fish drying system, and as you're climbing it, you have to quickly pivot in between the openings where there's a bunch of fish hanging and drying off of hooks, and you have to go to where there's no fish as an opening to get through each section, and then the next slat of those fish being dried will come. But obviously, because it's almost like a puzzle, where that opening is, it goes to a different part of the line. And so what's frustrating about that is you almost have to be like 100% on point, incredibly accurate, and the mechanics of the game, especially in terms of like moving quickly, accelerating, deaccelerating, come to a complete stop, is not always as responsive as you would hope. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And that caused me to die a lot in this one section, whereas I was pretty like death-free the majority of the game. But levels like that were pretty frustrating. There were other areas where it was kind of frustrating. And also sometimes like you use the environment and you use the context of the environment to understand where to go next. And it always wasn't incredibly clear, and I don't need it to hold my hand. But what I do need to do is make it user accessible. And what I mean by that is give us an opportunity for ourselves to say, okay, well, this is very clearly the next path to go down, the next way to walk, run, explore, to progress the story. And that wasn't always clear. And sometimes I would have to walk around in just circles over and over and over to like find a place to go, which was kind of frustrating. But all that being said, there were some parts of it that were really well constructed. So throughout this game, like I said earlier, it actually is incredibly self-aware. It's very meta to a degree, because there's a lot of different game mechanics to go into. So sometimes you're driving a motorcycle, sometimes you're walking, sometimes you're running, and sometimes you're controlling a crane, sometimes you're going up a big, like I said, a big fish drying system, sometimes you're moving cans of food around. And when you're in like this 8-bit world, which shows INDIKA's past, the gameplay mechanics of it are actually pretty solid. And I honestly think if they had taken more time to make the game reflective of the precision and the user-friendly control system as they did in the 8-bit area, I would have more fun. And honestly, this game probably would have been just more fun if it was 8-bit in nature. And I know that might sound weird in a time frame where we're really used to these lifelike graphics, and not to say that the third-person walking simulator part of the game was bad, but that's really what it was. It was a third-person walking simulator. That's the majority of it, and some puzzles here and there, but it didn't really do anything in terms of making the game interesting. I mean, there were times that you had to run away from like wolves and dogs, but it was just whatever, and there was no real sense of urgency to the game. So very similar to the way that the gameplay mechanics are kind of all over the place, especially depending on the level. And in the same way, I'm sure this review is all over the place because my mind is kind of broken right now. The actual narrative is all over the place as well. And I think a big part of that is just in the way that it's framed. So like I said, we kind of go back and do flashbacks semi-frequently throughout the game. And you learn about a romantic relationship that INDIKA had with this boy named Mirko, and then eventually, spoilers again, by the end of the game, INDIKA kind of betrays him and causes him to get murdered, like right in front of her by her own dad. That was, I don't know, like the narrative and the tone kind of played with you a little bit, and I think a big part of that was because it was self-aware as a game. When you got points, there was like a skill tree, and to this day, well, to this moment, I guess, I can't really wrap my head around like what the point of the skill tree was. It was to gain more like currency and faith and all these things, but you lose all that at the end anyways, when you have this like little dance with the devil towards the end. And I think the other thing that was really weird about like the entirety of the narrative was that it didn't really know where it was going. So I think for a lot of people, they'll probably play this game and say, "Oh, it was incredibly clear, like the story." And from a theme perspective, sure, it's about reconciling your beliefs against the church's beliefs and trying to reconcile your own faith against your own doubt. And I can appreciate that, and I respect it, and I think that anybody who's ever been a Christian, especially, you've encountered that doubt, and you've encountered that feeling, and you reconcile that. But the way it was told here was not very cohesive. And I think a big part of it was it also compromised INDIKA's like beliefs, even if you take away from her religious beliefs, like some of the things that she does throughout the game don't necessarily adhere to who she is just as a person. And then the game leaves like on an incredibly hopeless note, where her faith is completely broken. It's almost like she looks in the mirror towards the end of the game and she sees like the devil there. And so then it wasn't clear, is the devil possessing her? Has the devil won like Indika's soul? Like, it was weird, and like I said, it seemed very half-baked, and the execution was not great. I think another thing that was, I don't want to say it was half-baked, I think it was actually probably the best element of this game, but like it could have been expanded upon, was the sound design and the soundtrack to the game. It was always unsettling and it was always anxious. So what I mean by that is it would always have conflicting notes and chords and even instrumentation of the notes that were being played. The instrumentation was conflicting within itself. And so I think that was a really interesting way to kind of level up the anticipation of what was going to happen next. But so many things took away from the enjoyment of the game, like the narrative and the fact that there was not really any clear like direction thread from beginning to end, outside of she's delivering this letter to a father of the Catholic Church, and the letter says that like she's not worthy of being a nun, and so there's kind of that thread. And then Ilya wants to, get his hand repaired. Ilya is her companion, and go to the Holy City where the cadets are kept, and use his faith to like prove that he is a religious man. He's spiritual, regardless of the fact that he was like a prisoner, and get his hand repaired. Like, everything that happens from a thematic standpoint and how it relates to the narrative doesn't work. It's not cohesive. And then every level is like, the level design to me felt like it tried to be bigger than it deserved to be. So for example, when you're in the canning level, why are the cans so big? Like, why are these cans of food so big? There's not any like narrative reason why that would be, and it felt just annoying trying to navigate these cans so that like you could continue through the level. And a lot of this game just felt like I'm just trying to progress so I can get this part over. And I hate to say that because I think a lot of ideas were okay, but overall, like, the 8-bit parts were the best. I could have played a full game of that and probably been a lot happier. This game isn't the worst game I've ever played. It's not even close. I mean, I think this game, and I know people, like, it's really highly rated. I would give this game, like, a 7 out of 10. Like, it's okay. It's not an adventure game. It's not a horror game. It's not a puzzle game. It's a walking simulator that tries to say something about religion and then throws in puzzles here and there. But even then, the puzzles aren't like a gameplay mechanic. They're to continue moving you through a level that is just annoying to progress through. And the controls aren't great. Sound design's okay. Story is really lacking. And that's really what I play games for. I play single player games nowadays. I don't really play multiplayer games. I play for the story. And I think this, like I said, even as a Christian, like I respect that they were maybe trying to say something. But especially the way the game ended, like it did not feel like it earned that ending. And also the ending was just kind of rough to watch because it didn't say anything. It tried to tell you that it was saying something, but it didn't. So maybe people are going to be upset. Let me know in the comments below. How do you like Indika? What did you rate it? But I think at best it's a 7 out of 10. All right, guys. That's my review of Indika. I don't think it was a waste of 5 hours. I think it was okay. I think it was worth having played the game to just know what it's like and have an honest opinion on it. But let me know what you thought of the game. If you played it, if you haven't played it and you're going to play it, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the game. Make sure you like this video. If you like gaming, if you like wrestling or the occasional parody humor, you're in the right place. And then make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. We got more videos coming out soon, and I will see you very soon.